This journey to Antigua started early in Westchester, New York. I boarded a flight and was headed out to Norfolk, Virginia to meet the rest of the crew. Touchdown. Just arrived in Norfolk. Headed to meet old Jimbo as soon as we find the rest of the luggage. One of the first orders of business was getting a briefing from the United States Coast Guard. Little did I know how important this would become.
We have to launch and go verify that that vessel is not in distress. And before we can come back, we have to verify over the radio that we have the correct hex ID for that EPIRB.
It was so beneficial to hear from an actual Coast Guard rescue pilot. After that, we headed outside for a demonstration on deploying life rafts. It's funny because all of us have these devices on our boat, but maybe we've never thought about how to deploy them. In an emergency situation, you don't want to have to be thinking about how to do something for the first time. So seeing this on safe land was great. We then headed back to the boat and started to go through every nook and cranny to check safety equipment and look at how the boat was outfitted.
Oh, really important. How do we feel about our toilet paper supply on board?
There's two more of those.
Okay.
So we're good.
We don't want to be in a shitty situation.
Hey, I don't know if you were here when we were talking
I maybe
about it
should have
before,
just
but
left
I
that
tried to
part
go
out
through
because
the
perhaps
guys'
I was cursing the rest of the
store,
trip.
And it's the worst toilet paper ever. So if you don't want to use that, go ahead and break into that.
Really important things before we set sail.
Dramamine or scopolamine.
There's
or
one
something.
bottle here.
Oh, that's Dramamine.
A lot of preparation
No,
goes
it's
into
different.
offshore
I
sailing,
have,
including
I brought
appropriate
an
medical
infection
supplies on
too,
board.
but this is
For not only while you're on the
which is
boat,
relatively
but
old,
for
but
arrival
it's
into a country where you perhaps may not be able to get certain things.
Jamaica, and now Haiti, Dominican Republic, even Puerto Rico. This rain
Trying to find a weather window to get out was tough, and seas were brewing. It didn't really seem like we might be able to get out this week.
It is going to be difficult, at least over the next few days.
Our typical route to Antigua appeared to be taking us right through a hurricane based on the current weather predictions. All we could do was wait and watch. So I headed out with Sarah, one of our crew members, to provision the boat. We took Jim's giant truck, and I was really proud of my parking job. Back at the boat, there was more preparations going on. Tying down the dinghy, tying down the fuel bladder, and basically going over systems on the boat to make sure everything would be safe offshore. That evening, we returned to the Dawg house to join our fellow sailors for another weather briefing and some time together before heading offshore. It really was incredible how many sailors were joining the rally this year.
I'm not sure how to let them in.
We're doing that on our end.
Weather offshore is really important. So this was a weather briefing from our shoreside weather coordinator, Chris Parker. While we're at sea, he provides updates daily via email with various waypoints and routings to ensure that we have the best weather possible to try to reach our destinations. So many sailors attend these briefings ahead of time to ask many questions about weather windows for departure and when we might be able to expect arrival and what we might be able to expect even over the next week or so during our journey.
Are perfectly fine with going to Bermuda and waiting there for things to open up to get to the Caribbean.
The weather this year, though, was proving particularly difficult. There was a storm in the Caribbean that was brewing, but models weren't agreeing whether it was going to go west or east. So trying to predict whether or not we could actually depart for Antigua and make it the entire way without having a hurricane in our path or getting stuck in Bermuda was really difficult.
First crew dinner. Everybody's happy? Oh, everybody's happy?
I'm happy.
All right. It's success, Sarah, success.
After dinner, it was back to the pre-departure checklist.
Like an hour drive to me, something like that. Yeah, not a huge deal.
No, test the water maker. It's still on the list.
Yeah, we gotta do that shit.
So there's basically 2 lines for each watch. The top.
Captain Jim then went over crew watch logs.
Every watch change, we're going to write down our course, our speed, and then. Why didn't it show up? Oh, okay, I didn't add it in. But yes, please.
With only a few days before departure, it is true.
I'm
Sailors like
getting
to
to the end
drink
of the
while we're
glass
on
of wine.
land
Somebody can
because we certainly
pass me
don't
the
drink
bottle
at
of
sea.
Okay. I will do that.
Thank you, sir. Much
Bottle of
appreciated.
Wine is in the fridge.
Much appreciated. Thank you, sir.
And so you write down in this top line, course, speed over ground, sky. This is like clear, rain, just a brief description. You can estimate cloud cover, wind direction, wind speed, latitude, longitude, and then this is a little confusing, but I guess we'll have to assume we're going to Bermuda. We'll see, because what I like to do is our trip, okay? Trip is how far we've traveled, and then range is our distance to where we're going, and our bearing is our bearing to where we're going.
So I should set up.
After the briefing from Captain Jim, there was just one more thing on my mind before departure that I needed to take care of.
Yep.
This takes me back to my camp days. Communal showers. If you're not a sailor, you'll soon find out that they get nicer the further south you go. Okay, clean. We're in Hampton, Virginia. I give the shower a 7 out of 10. So, no fob key to unlock the door, but there is a code. Shower was 10 out of 10 on pressure and hotness. Had a place to dry my hair. And now we're gonna head back to the boat, say goodnight, one last day of provisioning, and hopefully we'll be out of here Thursday morning ahead of these storms, headed for Bermuda. Walk after the shower, heading back to the boat. Got all the dogs pulled in here, some out there on anchor. And we're all waiting to make way. Antigua and Bahamas bound.
The next morning, we had to call in a diver to check the prop and to take out a piece under the boat that had been stuck that we needed to replace. Little did we know how important this was going to become. After a
Taco
day
Wednesday.
of hard work, it was time for dinner
Last
again.
time everybody gets a drink
And
and a proper night's sleep before we leave.
Are the mushrooms intended for
After
the
dinner,
tacos?
I got a
No,
visit from
those
an
were
old
Sarah's.
friend, Peter. He had helped me bring my boat up when I bought it just a few years ago.
You want 110 to 120 is probably okay for downwind sailing with strong.
After that, we got a visit from Stephanie, one of Jim's friends. And of course, at this point, with the night before departure, the booze was flowing, and so were the sailing stories.
I've had a few of these.
Yeah, no,
I
I
meant general.
right. But yeah, I mean, if the boat lived in the Caribbean, the wind is consistent and it's
Right.
stronger than it is here.
Trade. Or, like selling
Nobody's the witness protection program.
something like that. So, but he, he's just a young kid. He's in his 20s or maybe getting close to 30.
The stories went on, and
And,
Stephanie promised us donuts the next morning before departure.
Thank you for bringing donuts.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween.
It was 0700 on Halloween morning, and time for a few last crew photos before boarding the boat and tossing lines. We were Bermuda bound.
Look really serious.
I'm trying to look at the.
All right, bon voyage. Hampton. Heading for warmer weather. Yeehaw.
Leaving the dock that morning,
Good morning
we had
to
actually
the
had
squids
trouble
in the
getting
US
propulsion
Navy.
because the folding prop
Welcome home,
wasn't
boys.
deploying. However, we counted this up to a blade of paint that had been applied and figured that our motoring out into the ocean would be enough to knock that paint away. However, this was probably a big mistake. The Chesapeake's a pretty active naval location, and we got to see a submarine coming in as we were heading out to sea. Pretty cool. The Chesapeake is also a very busy location for commercial traffic. So if you're coming in and out of here day or night, it's very important to keep your eyes peeled.
Where'd you guys go? Come back. That's good luck.
Sailors look for anything that's good luck, including dolphins. And we toss the things that are bad luck, like bananas on board. But for some reason, on this trip, we wound up with bananas on board. We were officially underway, and when you first leave on this rally, many of the boats are grouped closely together. We spread out over time as we complete the journey. We were about 120 miles from our entry point to the Gulf Stream, and this is where things started to go wrong. And man, was I right, it went really bad. This was a brand new sail. It had actually never been flown before on this boat. And one of the first mistakes we probably made was making an attempt to do this for the first time in the middle of the Gulf Stream. Number one, it's extremely dangerous to have crew forward deploying a sail like this out in the open ocean. But it was a relatively calm morning, and I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer. So I decided not to say anything, and we proceeded with putting the sail up. This sail was a G1 Jenniker. It's a relatively light wind sail, and you can use it to sail kind of downwind on a beam reach. The danger in flying one of these is if wind goes above 15 knots, it can really make the boat hard to handle and or blow out the sail. Because these sails are meant for light wind, they have huge sail area, way bigger than a typical head sail on a boat. While that's great for light wind sailing, it's also part of what makes these sails hard to fly and dangerous when they get out of control. This was the first and the last that we would see of this sail. Moments later, wind increased to well over 20 knots. The boat rounded up a wave, and we were cross-sheeted and knocked over, meaning we were on our side in the water in the Gulf Stream. I scrambled for the helm to put auto helm on standby. Once the sail was back in the boat, I then tried to start the engine. Having not noticed that a jib sheet had went overboard, seconds later, our prop was fouled. We were in the middle of the Gulf Stream with no engine. The wind was from the wrong direction for an immediate return to Hampton, Virginia. So we had to get emergency weather routing to find out the quickest way to get out of the Gulf Stream before a front came through that was going to produce northern winds and would definitely increase the sea state in the Gulf Stream. We were in constant contact with the Coast Guard, providing updates on our location every 3 hours as we limped our way back to Virginia in building seas. The plan was to limp our way back to the mouth of Chesapeake and call U.S. tow to bring us into safe harbor. Sea state had improved the morning that we were headed home, and we were all happy to see land. We waited at the rally point and were very relieved to see U.S. tow coming to get us.
The end of the trip to what was supposed to be Bermuda. Hello, towboat U.S. Now he looks a hell of a lot colder and stormier than Antigua, but here he comes.
It was a disappointing end to a trip. And back in safe harbor as the sun went down, we found ourselves right next to a U.S. Coast Guard station that had probably helped us along the way. I really can't say enough about our U.S. Coast Guard and how wonderful they are in keeping track of us all the way back and making us feel comfortable that we knew that somebody on land had our backs had the situation worsened. So many valuable lessons were learned in this trip. We were so happy to be home and very grateful to Captain Jim Brewer for helping us navigate our way back and helping keep the crew calm and safe.